which is what's been all of the, all the hullabaloo is about. So there you go, which just goes back to what one of my professors taught me in one of my freshman classes for my bachelor's degree: never do hard coding.
Well, as you can probably surmise, I grumble about it, I talk about the politics behind it, I'm frustrated behind it, and then Dr. Field says we're going to make the best of it and puts your team to work.
And towards that end, I just would like to thank you, Mr. Barrows, for also being here and presenting that very important aspect of this.
Absolutely. I apologize. Absolutely. That is the most complicated part of this, and you're a great person to lead those efforts.
You say 2021, that's essentially a 5-year runway, or we graduate the first grouping, if you will. In my 5 years, seeing CSAT, TCAT, CMAS, PARC, and so now we've got graduation requirements that have essentially a 5-year runway. We, as Dr. Hatchell about this today, about whether the State Board of Education ends up going D or stays R. We'll have a few elections between now and then at the State House, and I don't know, maybe I'm just making comments. This is probably a comment disguised as a question. Do you see, or is there anything out there that could possibly change this? And what kind of scenarios are out there that we do all of this work, and that's probably one of the frustrations all of you experience, we all experience, that we do all of this work, you've been working on this for a couple of years, only for it to possibly unravel over the next couple of years. Is there any discussion, maybe it's a question for Linda, Casby, but is there any discussion out there that all of the work that you've done for the past couple of years is somewhat all for naught? Because again,
public education. You forgot to add the standards revision on the list too,
And
which is going to
ACT,
happen in
SAT.
2018. Oh yeah, and then the ACT,
yeah,
SAT.
we had a whole bunch of TLAs there. Because I saw you have ACT, SAT, and I was going to ask, well, are you going to get rid of ACT because now we're really in Colorado talking SAT or the USAT? For the most part, none of us will be on the board when all of this is truly implemented, and they won't have the appropriate knowledge of, yeah, well, we started this and we have this runway that has now changed, and then you're going to start. I'm just curious what thoughts, and I know you'll do a great job and all that stuff and do the best you can. I'm just curious, are you concerned really about that?
We're not.
Okay.
I think it is a lot like educator effectiveness. That,
right.
The one thing I would say, remember, this was a legislative action. So it would take the state legislature to change this. Without a different composition state legislature, and I also believe a different governor, this won't get changed. The way I read the political.
Okay.
Great.
Ms. Mamie?
You referenced CASB a little bit. I will tell you what I hear from our CASB colleagues more than anything is wrestling with the question not of should we do capstone-like projects. I think most people agree that that is a best practice in terms of kids being able to, and we've talked about that before, and kids being able to demonstrate learning. The question that many of them had, and I think Mrs. Bullock heard it too in that session that we were at, people said, great, what if we have a kid who by sophomore in high school meets all the standards? Bada boom, bada bing, can they go? Because remember, these requirements, their guidelines, their requirements, don't say anything about credits. It's all about these test scores or a capstone project. The legislature did not speak about, we ourselves have said, no, we still want our kids to get 50 credits. We want our kids to stay in high school all the way through high school. And I'll tell you where the conversation is big in the rurals. There are many folks in the rurals who are like, look, if we had a kid who can get out of high school by the time they're a sophomore in high school and they want to go on to a career or they want to go on to college or do whatever, you know what? Okay, well then let's let them go. That is the conversation I think that we're going to hear more about, probably long beyond the time that I'm here. But that's where some of this is headed. So what if my kid can graduate from high school by the time they're 15 or 14 and a half? If they can walk in as a freshman and demonstrate proficiency, then why don't we set them free?
That's the competency-based learning.
Yes, and then we get into the whole social emotional thing and the whole thing. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Communicator redesign, Dr. Hatchell.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cortez.
Good evening.
Hello. Yes.
Should we do like down their sides?
Well.
I'm so cold back there. So I'm here to talk to you about communicator. So show of hands, and don't lie, do you all know what communicator is? Okay, that's okay. You're gonna know after. So the communicator is the official newsletter of D20. And I think that most of you know that I love my quotes, and I love to find them to kick presentations off. And I wanted to start this presentation with this quote. People without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And so as I thought about communicator, I wanted to go backwards. You know, being new to the district and I haven't been in the culture that long, I wanted to make sure I understood what the heck a communicator was, where did it come from, what did people feel about it. So I did a little research, and I'm going to take you along the journey with me. So communicator has been in the district since 1978, which I find amazing. The newsletter has lasted that long. So it's 38 years old. So in that 38 years, primarily the audience, it started out, it went to every district family, whether you had students with us or not. And then for a period in the middle, it just started to go to families, and soon we're going to go back to that bigger reach, but I'll talk about that a little later. The frequency of the newsletter has varied. At one point, it came out 4 times a year, then it went down to 3 times a year, we got down to 2 times a year, and most recently it was a once-a-year publication. So it's been a little all over the board. The length, this is my favorite, like this is one of, well, it's not my favorite, but the length literally has gone from 4 pages all the way up to 40 pages. There were communicating, that was before the interwebs. So before the interwebs, we were at 40 pages. And as I was going through all of these old communicators, the thing that I found the most, and I think Dr. Hatchell and I laughed about it in my office, was on the back page of one of the communicators, it said, "Will the family who moved here from York, Nebraska, please contact Mrs. Lockwood at the central office." I love that.
How long ago was that?
It was in the 80s.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, it's okay, right? So just to give you a visual of what the communicator looked like, this is a sampling of the communicator in the 1980s. So I have, if you feel really compelled, I have these back there with me and you can look at them. But you know, your standard 8.5 by 11, no color, almost feels like it was maybe made on a mimeograph machine. Probably not, but it might have been. It might have smelled really good when it came off the mimeograph machine. So then we went to the 1990s, and in the 90s, man, this thing was all over the board. So in the middle there, that blue one, that's the one that was 40-some pages long, right? It kind of feels like a TV guide. Like it's got that same paper feel.
Ads in it? That is Burger King on the back.
Yeah, there's Burger King. So guess how much a Whopper was in 1996? 59 cents. So ads, I mean, it's all over the place. So this is the 1990s. This is the early 2000s. So I broke up the 2000s because this is before internet got huge. I wanted to kind of break it up that way. And communicator in the early 2000s was super consistent. It, slick, you know, the slick, shiny, like car salesman-y paper, no photos, really heavy text, mostly about choice. And then as we got into 2006 to last year, again, kind of a little all over the place again, but we're still keeping to that 4-page format.
May I stop you?
Yeah.
Go back one slide, please.
Oh, I was hoping some of you might, this one or the one before?
Look at the, no, this one. Look at the one in the upper right corner where it says school calendar committee weighed many priorities before making final recommendations. That's the committee that fed our policy on calendars that we've talked about before.
I mean, it's been super interesting going through these things. I found one of Colette, the principal, from 1999. She's getting an award. I mean, there's some of you guys are in here. It was really fun. I mean, it gave me a nice big breadth and depth about the district. And I thought that was important. So before I went forward, I wanted to go back and look and understand where this thing came from. And the reason I did that is I wanted to go, how do we move forward, right? Like this has become sort of institutional. but is it still meeting the needs of the folks that we serve? And so as we looked forward, I wanted to look at three things. I wanted to look at an audit of our existing communication. And what I found in that audit was the communicator was something that we'd been doing for a really long time. Even though the frequency was a little all over the board, it had been in our kind of our toolbox for a long time. The other thing that we've been doing is it was a publication called This Week, and it was specifically geared toward just the staff and teachers, so staff and teachers at D20, and it was a PDF publication that went out on Fridays, one page, sometimes two, mostly sort of a kudos thing. So that was something that had been going out for a few years. We also have D20 TV that's been around and has a lot of viewership that lives both on cable and online. So that was another channel that we have. We have our website at ASD20.org, and then finally we had our social media channels. So as I looked at all of them, I wanted to look at this goal of how do we create some efficiencies around all of this communication? How do we make sure that we're using the most recent and effective technology to get messaging out there? And what do we keep and what do we let go of? And so then I kind of created a plan. And the plan is a 3-phase plan that I'm going to walk you through here in 1 second. And the first step of that plan was to redesign the communicator. So you'll see, and I have my marked up version, that's the version right before we went to the printer, but the new communicator, which will land in your boxes in the next few, probably, it depends on what your zip is, but next 7 to 10 days, is a big tabloid size publication, right? Kind of fun, it's bigger. And to get a true sense, if you get the business journal, it'll be about this size. So the new communicator will be large, and that's so it will stand out in the mail. It'll be kind of a nice, beautiful white paper. And the content is really around not just highlighting the kudos in our district, but starting to develop relationship and starting to help develop loyalty among our consumer base. So within the communicator, you'll see kind of timely news, but when you've got a newsletter, right, we're so used to immediacy, it can't be something that happened yesterday. So you'll see big news, but then when you open it, you'll see every communicator will have something that is called a teacher tell-all. You'll see a school spotlight. You'll see a principal profile, so that you start to understand the humans behind the organization, right? We're an organization, but we're all humans, and we want to create that connection and that relationship. You'll also see upcoming events in the newsletter, and then you'll see some feature stories about what are the warm and fuzzies that we're doing, because that's really what a print newsletter can do for people. And sometimes you might say, okay, it's 2016, why the heck are we spending money on print? Why are we doing a print newsletter? And there's some reasoning behind that. So there was a recent study at UVA that they looked at an alumni publication. They looked at an online version and they looked at a print version. And they found, especially with younger millennial audiences, which blew my mind, that the print version had better readability, it had better open rates, and the way that they scanned the publication was of a higher level than an online publication. And then in the marketing world, there's this thing that we call, that's called coffee table effect. So even though I might send you an email newsletter or might have a news blog online, if I send you something to your home and it lays around on your kitchen table, on your coffee table, you're more likely to pick it up and remember things and go, oh, I'm going to get online and get more information. So that's what we call the coffee table effect. So even in 2016, print really still does have its place, but you want to limit it so that you're not breaking the bank and killing a bunch of trees. So our frequency, we're going to start out with a fall-winter, and then we'll do a winter-spring, and just see how it goes. The other big thing in this print edition that's really important is every story will have a link, will have a URL link to get more information back on our website, specifically so we can start to measure and track, right? That's really, really important. We want to use these types of publications to drive traffic to our website. So that's phase one. Phase two, and you're not going to see anything that's ours yet, because that's going to come in January. But the print old school communicator will soon be accompanied with what we're going to call the e-communicator. And the e-communicator is taking the stories that we have on D20 TV, like cherry picking the best ones. It's taking all of those stories that we used to put in a PDF and send out every Friday, and it's creating a new style blog that will be updated in real time. So we don't have to wait until Friday, or we don't have to wait until the following week to put a story up. And it will have all the most recent stories that will be categorized, searchable, and trackable. So, and the beauty of this is, yeah, it will serve our internal audiences, but we can then tweet, Facebook out stories directly to reporters. Reporters can go there to get information about our district. They can literally lift stories and use them for story ideas. And our constituency, our parents can go there to learn the most recent information. So it really will hit all audiences with just one publication instead of doing 5 different publications. And it will drive traffic back to our website, which is what we always want to be doing, driving that traffic back. So then the third phase of this plan, it's really simple. It's just track and analyze and change accordingly. And that's the beauty of an online publication, because we can take that information and we can go, people really don't seem to be reading these articles. Maybe we adjust the writing. Maybe we don't have enough visuals. Maybe they just don't care about that stuff. So we need to figure out what they care about. So that, I think, will be the beauty, and then it will reflect in the print publication as well. We can get really savvy about what we're putting in there. So that's my 60,000-foot communicator presentation. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Borland?
You may have said this, but the new print version of the communicator, so that's going to own.
Oh, I didn't really say it, did I?
Okay,
Like
yeah.
alluded
Where's
to it.
it going?
It will go to every district household.
Perfect.
Yeah, so it's just not families.
Yeah, I'm
So,
glad to hear that.
so everyone who lives in
District 20.
whether they have kids or not.
Yep. Yeah.
That's
Yeah, and I think that's important because it helps you. I mean, that's really what communication does. It's not just about disseminating our messages, it's about building relationship. And that's what this will do. It'll build relationship.
Well, and I think it's, obviously first about our kids and our parents, but
Yeah.
there's a whole group of people out there who don't have kids who pay for what we do.
Right.
I just think that's a good thing.
And we need to let them know what we're doing. We have a responsibility to them.
Do you have an idea of what that would cost?
For this
For
thing?
the communicator to go out to every household?
Oh yeah, so so right now, to print the publication, the printing bids, when I went out and got 3 bids, they came, this is fascinating, they came in between 4,000 and 7,000. So of course we went with the lower end. So printing for 40,000 is right around 4,000, and then mailing, and this was a total learning for me, was if we just did a mail list, if we took and bought a mailing list from a mail house and then we merged it with our list, mailing was going to come out to like about $4,000. Well, there's a service that you can use with the post office, you know what I'm talking about, right? Where you just do a buy for zip codes, and they put this little code on the top of your newsletter, and they do the right amount of stacks for each postal carrier, and they slip it in everybody's mailbox. You don't even need addresses and names. And that was right around like $1,600.
That's per edition.
Yep. So we're looking at on the high end, $6,000. So 12 a year.
And for phase 3, do we have the expertise to analytics tracking or resources to do that now?
Yeah, so we're working really closely with Shelley's department to, and we're using a platform that will easily allow us to set that up, and then it will have the Google Analytics on it. We'll be able to track it, and we'll be able to see bounce rates and how much time people are interacting with each individual story. Yeah. Yeah.
Ms. Van Mater?
I just want to say, outstanding work.
Oh.
I love this. And yes, I had the same thought as Mr. Borland, being that I have recently entered that population of people who no longer have children in schools. I now know what I don't know. I've lost a huge amount of that communication inside the school district and what's happening and in various things. So I really appreciate that outreach to us, and I also really appreciate the paper, because I have the best of intentions. I have lists and notes and emails and things to click on, and oh my gosh, and I can never catch up with all of it. So I love having that. The coffee table effect is big in my house. We save those newspapers, and sometimes I don't always read my Gazette every day, but I find if I didn't have a paper copy of it in my house, I'd never go back and look.
Exactly.
We scan through those things, and it might, we might get 2 or 3 days behind on our paper communications, but we get through them because otherwise they stack up.
It's true.
And you do at least go through them and look for them. And I just wanted to say, thank you so much for going back and doing the work of looking at the history. I'm huge on looking at the history of an organization. Always, I think we always have to be in touch with our history and to be reminded of where we've come from. That teaches us where we need to go, but it also teaches us where we don't need to go. It's important to learn from where we've been the good and the bad of what we've done before and what's worked and what hasn't worked. And so I just really appreciate the fact that you took the time to do that before you set out on a new plan.
It could have been really tempting to go like, ooh, this is expensive, we're just gonna get rid of it. You know, but it's when something has been around for 38 years, you kind of need to honor that and go, well, there's a reason it's been around. So how can we honor that but bring it up to 2016? You know, so I want to share with you because you brought up a really good point that I meant to mention. So a lot of companies will do an email newsletter, right? Like they'll use a constant contact, or so we could have done something like that. But when I was digging into the research around that, email open rates, what do you think those are, just for giggles?
9%. It depends on.
It does depend. They typically max out at 23%. So, I mean, that's like a really good open rate on an email, especially a newsletter. And so that was something that didn't seem like a great option. So in doing this kind of hybrid approach with print, we know that Gen Xers and Boomers still love their print, and we know that Millennials love their social media. So if we do a print twice a year that's the big umbrella stories, we know that we're reaching half Xers and Boomers. But if we look at the online version that will get pumped out through social media, we'll be meeting the lower Xers and all the Millennials. So we're hitting both chunks through two venues. Yeah.
One little Easter egg you could put in there too to see how well the print edition is resonating is have a story in there with a link that is not included in the online version, and that's a way that you can kind of see, well, who's actually reading the print version.
Exactly. We have to make sure it's a really interesting link. Anyway, thank you guys for your feedback. And if you have ideas or questions, let me know because we'll put them in the next edition.
Ms. Johnson?
I'm also so very excited. I think this is excellent work. And so it seems like you consolidated the multiple publications into the communicator and then the E.
The E.
And so where do I find the E?
So
Well, I mean, where can I find it? Right, can I just go on to there anytime?
Not yet, because it won't be until early, like it'll be in January that we're gonna go live. Right now, we had to investigate platforms to put it on that could push to the social media, that could be easily updatable. We wanted something that like, if I was out at a school and something very cool was happening, because there will be just a photo section, could literally take a picture, stand there and update it to the e-communicator. So we had to figure out what platform would work best on that. So we'll start narrowing that down and building now through January, and then we'll do a launch in the, I guess that's winter semester. Yeah. So as soon as y'all send out links, and then we'll send out reminders, even though email open rates are not great, we'll still send out reminders that way, like, hey, the new edition is up, and then the other thing about an e-communicator is it can have an RSS feed, so you could subscribe. So every time that it's updated, you could get a little note.
Oh,
yeah.
That's super good.
So there will be some cool efficiency.
Well,
there.
well done. Great job.
I'm excited for it, but we're not quite there yet.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item, notification of automatic renewal of agreement for superintendent's contract. As you all know, since you've been around a while, there is a requirement in the superintendent's contract that he notices. There's an audit that he notifies us. And there's two ways he can do it, either by certified mail or he can put it on the board agenda. This serves as a formal notification that there's an automatic renewal clause, and we have to notify him if we're not going to renew. And we'll go through that process when we do the review, when we have the interview. But this is a notification in accordance with the contract that he has. Monthly financial report through October 2016, Dr. Hatfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gregory.
Good evening, or night, whichever it may be. I really don't have a whole lot to report with much of monthly financials. The further we get into the year, the more those numbers that were kind of more disparate at the beginning are starting to look more and more like previous years. So nothing new to report with the monthly financials, or nothing to add to what's already in your packet. However, I would say that following up on, since the audit was presented earlier tonight, and it all kind of rolls with budgetary stuff also, know that in January you will be presented a mid-year update. The first piece of updating that mid-year budget is that audit. So taking those actual numbers from last year, updating the beginning fund balances to what they really are, now versus what they were budgeted for last year, and what this year's budget was built on, is the first step, and it's a very important step. So although the audit kind of is a final product in one sense, it also creates some very important next steps also. With that, that's all I have.
Any questions? Mrs. Bullock?
Mr. Gregory, did you take something off page 15? The little, fund balance?
Oh, we did, because it's not a quarterly one. Those are only every quarter. We can do it we do it every month. We just
No.
don't put it on there until every quarter, so, yes.
I didn't realize that.
And actually, I didn't do a separate report on updating fund balance pieces, because one, it's in your audit, and two, you'll get it again when the mid-year budget is updated.
You know, the first one of these I read, I think, was obviously a few years back. I think it was 272 pages or something. Now this is down to 170 or something. Budget's bigger, yeah.
Probably don't know this, but we used to print like 40 copies of that also. We're down to printing about 12 now, because it's available online. Same thing with the budget.
Any questions for Gregory?
Well done as always.
Thank you.
Was our business this evening focused on activities that will promote academic achievement and the development of knowledge, skills, and character in our students? Were there any items that may not have a direct effect on our goal blends within our scope of responsibility? Be safe going home. Thank you.
Send me another email, Tracy.
I did?
Has,
Well, I got one.
Happy Thanksgiving, all.
Because I accepted the invitation, realized he came from you, not Katrina. But Katrina didn't have one for the second date. It only came for the first date.
Well, and I didn't get one for the second date, but I was like, why is Linda sending me this?
Because I told him to do
Well, it wasn't me.
or so Outlook would have us believe.
Sometime
When Outlook and here we are, she sent the invitation on the second